And we're back. You're here on Call to Reason with Loveless and Beth. And we are back, and we have got our guest, very special guest, Kevin Chavous, calling in here shortly. Beth, I think it's going to be a really good follow-up to the interview we had with him yesterday. He's really got a lot of good stuff to talk about, and today we're going to be talking about how to pick a good school. And he's written an article that's been published in a few places. We are having him on as part of our wonderful relationship with Urban News Service, the Urban News Service Report. And it features writers and their stories on topics that really are important to a lot of us, particularly in urban settings and cities. So we want to welcome in our guest today, again, Kevin Chavous, former DC City Councilor and National Education Reform Advocate. Kevin, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Loveless. Hello to you and Beth. It's good to be on the air again.
Tell us, Kevin, how we've read a couple of your articles, and the one we're discussing today is extremely riveting again, and it talks about how to pick the right school for your child. How do you pick the right school for your child?
Well, the first thing I would say to folks who are real concerned about the process is don't be afraid, or, like they say, don't be scared, because it can be very, very intimidating when you think about, how am I going to find the right fit for my child? And particularly for some folks who may not have gotten the education that they were entitled to, and they may feel intimidated. So, I had a really good conversation with a young woman in my community in Ward 7, Sheila Jackson, a longtime D.C. resident. She went through fits trying to decide where to send her daughter to school when she received a scholarship. And so between the two of us, we talked through this, and she said, look, first thing you got to do is talk to people. And in your church, in your beauty shop or barber shop, the grocery store, community center, just talk to people about, the schools that you're considering. What is the buzz? Because sometimes the buzz in the street is stronger than anything that the school says about itself. And then she talked about the fact that, you need to understand beyond, the safety of the school. And safety of the school is real important, because, like it or not, some schools aren't safe. But as Sheila reminded me, that just because a school is safe, which is a number one priority, doesn't mean kids are learning. You can have a lot of happy schools where people are happy and they're safe and they seem to be doing well and the school is clean, but they may not be learning. Johnny or Jane can't read. So it's real important for parents to sit down with the principal and ask what their plan is in terms of making sure that all kids get to where they need to be, and also ask about parent involvement. Those kind of things are important, because these days people can feel intimidated when going into schools, and putting all that in the context really matters.
And about that, what advice do you have for parents working multiple jobs who can't spend the time they would like to at PTA meetings and open houses? How can they stay involved when their financial constraints demand that they spend so much time at work and less time participating with their kids in schools?
That's a great question, Beth. And I think that one of the other things I talk about in the article is you do your research and talk with other people. You got to be an educated consumer. And if you happen to be in a position where you're working multiple jobs, then you may be fortunate, unlike some, to be able to have access to the internet. And there are several websites that you should look at, because a lot of these websites, they talk about the roles parents can play, particularly working parents, parents who have limited time. You understand the school's policy and approach, because sometimes schools will accommodate these parents through email or through conferences after hours or in the evening. So there are a couple sites greatschools.com is one, schooldigger.com, pickyparent.com. We can go over those later. But to more directly answer your question, if a school isn't really ready to work with the parent in terms of updating the parent on where things are with their child or getting information, then that's something you've got to take into account. It can't be the type of thing, because so many parents now are working and don't have the same level of time, physical time that they can spend at the school. But now with technology, you still can get a good preview about where your child is. And the school, if it's working with you, there should be enough flexibility where you can have parent conferences to accommodate your schedule.
So you would definitely advise a parent who is in that situation to make sure that the school is flexible in terms of the times that they can communicate with the parent, and that makes a lot of sense. That if they're the kind of if you're not contacting us between the hours of 9 to 5, you're not going to talk to us. That's probably not the school for your child.
Yeah, and I think you also want to ask the principal, what is your views on parental involvement? What policies do you use? And you want to get beyond just the PTA. I mean, the Parent Teacher Associations have done a great job over the years, but a lot of times the Parent Teacher Associations in some schools, they really are an extension of the principal, and they may not necessarily reflect on the current demands that most parents face. So you want to make sure you know what is the overall policy regarding parental involvement, and how can I ensure that I have direct communications in spite of my schedule. And along the same lines, you want to ask about the learning environment, because all schools have their own distinct cultures and learning and teaching philosophies, and you want to ask the teacher, look, my child does better in small classes. How big is the class for second grade? And if there's a problem, what do I do? What if my child is in sixth grade, doesn't necessarily connect with the teacher? What are the alternatives? You may want to ask about whether or not, the teacher's style in your classroom extends beyond just, the lecture format. I mean, a lot of teachers now are doing what we call experiential learning. I know a lot of these, more and more of these high school classes are doing that, and kids are getting excited about things like biology and chemistry, because as opposed to just reading about it in the book and being tested on it, they're going out in the nature and they're seeing the relationship between biology and science and the animals and trees and vegetation around them. And so you don't have to have experienced it yourself to at least ask the questions that could generate some ideas of whether or not it would work for your child. And trust me, when you ask enough questions, you also get a little more respect from the school leaders. They know that you're going to be one of those parents that's not just going to put up with anything.
So one thing that I have been reading about a lot about is the fact that children who have music or art or sports or even PE as a part of the curriculum at a school, that they tend to do better in school, yet we see these classes constantly being dropped out of curriculums to save money. And I guess this is a two-part question. One is what can parents do, particularly in the public schools, to make sure that these curriculums stay there? And secondly, where I'd like for you to look into your crystal ball and kind of give us maybe your speculation, although I know that people don't like to speculate, but maybe forecast and see where do you see us heading to a place where these things get reintroduced as we see our kids not do as well in school? Like, what do you forecast will happen?
Well, let me forecast first. I think that extracurricular activities are vitally important, and it goes back to my idea that one size doesn't fit all. kids respond to different learning modalities, and music and arts, vocational education, learning a trade. All that stuff is important, and not every child is going to go to college. But my goodness, you don't have to go to college to have a successful, productive life. Particularly if you have a skill that people will pay you a bunch of money to do, and it's something you love. So, I think that one thing that school used to be about that we've lost over the years, school used to be a training and learning ground for kids so that they could be exposed to as many things as possible, which would help them find what their own purpose and passion was. And we've lost that when we cut voc ed, we cut music, we cut the arts. But we need to keep doing more and more of that. And I think that if that is important to you, fortunately, there are some standalone charter schools in most cities that specialize in the arts or specialize in music. And, there are even these voc ed schools that you need to look at because, chances are, you may be able to access that. But if you don't have that, I think you need to first find out if you like the school, let's say, and they don't have music or they don't have, the arts or they don't have a band or something that you think would add to the school, I would ask the principal if they're flexible. First of all, I'd ask the principal if it would help if you help organize parents to try to lobby for that with the school board, councilman, or the city or whatever. But I also ask the principal if the principal's flexible enough to try to get to work with you to try to find some folks who would volunteer to do that. And there's a number of examples. I was just reading about this police officer in L.A. who there was a need for a baseball team, and he put together a group of his colleagues, and they sponsored a baseball team for his elementary school in Compton. It's done phenomenally well, and it shows increase in attendance and everything because he took it upon himself to organize it and find resources for it. I think that through community associations, through business groups, other civic organizations, if they're a group of parents that really want something and they show that they're willing to work with, the business leader, community leader, or the mentor to make it happen, and the principal's flexible enough, then magic can take place. And I think that just because a school doesn't have some of these extracurricular activities, it shouldn't stop you from trying to find help to get them organized. They did a movie recently, and Cuba Gooding was on it, and Loveless, you may remember it. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was about this guy who had spent time in prison who started a chess club in Southeast D.C., and I helped him get started. And he did it in Sousa and, Randall Highlands Elementary School. And those kids became chess masters. And largely because someone in the school said they'd like to teach kids how to play chess, this guy got involved, ex-con, into organizing a championship chess team in a school where no one thought would want to take that up. And it made a huge difference. Now they're legendary, and each year they recruit new kids. Attendance has gone up. Math and science grades have gone up because it's encouraged discipline, it's encouraged focus, and it's encouraged teamwork. So, this is an area where we haven't served kids and families as well as we should because of so-called budget cuts. But it's also a fresh area that, to your point, it's going to continue to grow. But there are a lot of people out here who want to help get some of these programs and resources in the schools. We just got to find them and ask them.
I think I know for me it's a huge concern because there are a lot of things just about art and about music and even sports that have contributed to a well-rounded education, getting out of school and knowing who Leonardo da Vinci is and finding yourself in professional situations where you get embarrassed if you don't know about things. That's one of the big concerns that I have actually about, public schools continuing to drop, these programs, and particularly with obesity being such a serious issue in the United States right now, and not having PE anymore, and getting kids excited about exercising and doing something besides sitting in front of an Xbox. Those are things that I'm really concerned about.
Well, and trust me, let me tell you both. If I had been exposed to music in school, I'm going old school. It'd be like I'd be Marvin Gaye. Y'all be paying to hear me, okay? And unfortunately, I didn't get exposed to all of that early on, and it does make a difference. I mean, look. The world is so offers so many opportunities for young people if they get access to it, and that's why you see when our kids do get access, they excel. And at every turn, I think that's another thing that parents need to look at when they're trying to figure out what school works for their child. You know your child, so you know a little bit about their likes and dislikes and what they respond to and some of their talent. Even at a young age, 5, 6 years old. So one of those questions on the list that I put it in the article, you need to ask about extracurricular activities and ask about the flexibility for additional extracurricular activities that may jive with your child if otherwise you like the school, but again, they may not have exactly the extracurricular activity that will work for your child.
So what do you think works? Because at the end of the day, if we can restore the love of learning to children, we'll find that even when they go into vocational training as opposed to college, some of the greatest innovations in automobile technology have come from suggestions from mechanics in the shop. Yep. On how to make things better. And some of these guys have even innovated themselves because the discipline and the learning that they took on when they tackle that vocation gives their mind a way to process things that have made some of these guys real innovators in the field. And so it is all about restoring that love of learning, whether it leads your child to a college education or to an amazing career in a vocation that is perfectly suited not only for their aptitude, but for their true interest and passion and their purpose.
Yeah, it's funny you would say that, Loveless. I mean, you really tapped into something that's near and dear to me. In fact, I've the last several days been finishing up the final draft of my manuscript for my next book, which is titled "Building a Learning Culture in America." I mean, the love of learning is something we had and we lost, and people don't place value or premium on learning. And I think the main reason why other countries are doing better than us, and I've visited some of them and visited schools and talked to kids and leaders over there, is that they don't. It isn't about test scores. They create a culture of learning, and they celebrate learning. And I think that we need to build a national obsession around learning, similar to what we do, around sports. And it's something where it can be almost a new brand of patriotism as opposed to something fear-based like the war on terror. I mean, just think about it. If we lift up learning in a way where we celebrate the fact that it's okay to be cool. Education is cool. I happen to know, spent a little bit of time with Shaquille O'Neal. Now, he went back to school and got his master's and his PhD, and I told him not long ago, I said, look, every kid in America knows who you are, but not every kid in America knows that you went back to get your PhD. And they need to know that because you would help make education cool. So I do think this idea of learning in all forms is not just about the education system, which school or which type of school or which system, public, private, whatever. It is about the individual and creating this love of learning that's positively infectious. And we all do it. Just about everyone Googles. I mean, you sit around with your friends, you ask, well, who starred in that movie? Oh, let me see. Let me figure it out. That's an example of learning. And we see the kids have that, and unfortunately, the system, either the wrong school or the wrong teacher, could snuff it out of them and marginalize and label our kids, and particularly some of our boys, and we end up losing them. Their interest in school or that light in their eyes is taken away by fourth grade. But if we continue to nurture the idea of learning and growing and experiencing new things, and then finding something that you can enjoy and have a passion for and master, I mean, my goodness, all bets are off. So I think, Lovelace, you hit on something that really is next level stuff, my brother. We really need to be focused on engendering this idea that learning is a good thing. And there are many types of learning, and there are many ways to get it done. And you don't have to be in a certain box to do it, that we all have talents we can share if we figure out what we like and then work hard to develop a passion for it and around it.
So speaking of cultivating an environment around learning, what in one part of your article, you suggest that schools that share best practices invest in their teachers and provide them with the mentoring and professional development that are always best. What are the investments schools should be making into their teachers? What are you looking for? If it were your child, what are you looking to see that the teachers have in their toolbox as a result of that investment that their school has made in them?
Beth, that's an excellent question. Look, I have visited hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know. I can't keep track of schools. And, it's like they used to say about, when I was young about racism, I can't always say what it is, but I know it when I feel it. I know it when I see it. And when I walk in a school, inside of 5 minutes, I can tell if it's a good school. And usually the centerpiece of a good school, all good schools, it begins and ends with the teachers and then the leadership allowing the teachers to teach. And the most effective schools that have consistently the best teachers have, you can call it professional development. I would call it like, peer review, peer-to-peer support, mentoring, what have you. They have a way for the teachers who are known to be good to continue to interact with younger teachers and nurture them and give suggestions. And they have a structure in place where these teachers are continually reviewed. And I'm not just talking about like some folks downtown who may not be familiar with the school or for culture and they check a box because it's based on some legislative mandate. I'm talking about that it's a culture of learning and a culture of teaching that understands that, all teachers have their own style and their approach, but, there are certain tricks of the trade, or there's certain things they can do to grow their effectiveness. And I have seen it. I remember I was in a school in Salem Wood in Massachusetts, and I spent the whole day with a bunch of teachers talking about how they attribute their success in the classroom with just being able to share with each other. And the principal has set aside blocks of time during the week where it's just teacher on teacher review and conversation and sharing best practices. And, conversely, you can see the schools that aren't necessarily doing as well, or the teachers that aren't viewed as effective. A lot of times they operate in a vacuum, in the dark, and by themselves. And so I think the professional development is important. But a lot of times when you talk about professional development, people are talking about money where they can get, continuing education and all that. I think that's fine and good. But I think that the principal has to figure out a way for this peer-to-peer thing inside the school setting among teachers who see each other every day. I think that makes a huge difference. And you're not going to hear much about that because people are really big on sort of structured professional development, which, again, is important. But the culture of a school, the learning culture of a school, is dictated by this all for one, one for all mindset where everyone feels like that, I'm invested in your kids' learning just like you're invested in my kids' learning. And then we've got a community of learners where everyone can learn and grow.
Restoring the school culture to that space where we are living in a me and you world as opposed to a me or you world is where we really got to be if we expect for community to not only be involved in the restoration of fine education for our children, but it's essential that the top-down culture of schools themselves adopt the me and you world model, because the me or you world model leaves teachers and students frustrated and communities suffering from a lack of academic excellence, which, for all the hoopla about American exceptionalism, we certainly have fallen way back in the pack in education. In reality, we're hardly exceptional at all.
No, I think that's true. And what's interesting, though, Loveless, to your point, I mean, this whole idea of a community of learners and it's all about us, and even the teacher-to-teacher, peer-to-peer community of learners, community of teaching approach, it also extends to kids. I mean, one of Success Academy's charter school in New York, Eva Moskowitz runs it, and she's highly controversial, but her success is not necessarily her. Her success is she's got this peer-to-peer thing down. She asked one of her teachers, this is a school in Harlem, and they've got the best math and science. They're in the top 3 or 4 in the whole state consistently. And she asked the teacher who is the highest performing, 7th grade teacher, 6th or 7th grade teacher, why are you so successful? You've got these low-income African-American boys and girls in the 90th percentile in math and science and reading every year. And it's just unheard of. And the teacher said, and even in the school, as the teachers were sharing, they said, how do you get this success for your kids? And she said, well, it's quite simple. I believe in the peer-to-peer thing for these kids. So I identified the kids in my classroom who got it and had a knack for math, and they loved it. And I said to them, look, I'm going to match you up with little Johnny here, little Jane, who's a good friend of yours. And they don't quite get it. And beyond what I'm teaching, I want you to help them with their homework and mentor them. And if they get their grades up, you get 2 extra free periods of recess. And let me tell you something. She has done that for the last 3 or 4 years. Everybody gets 90% in the classroom. Because, now all these kids who understood it, they had a vested interest not only in the learning, but they knew they were going to get some benefit. They got to be on the playground. And so there are always creative ways to get kids excited about learning. And then once everyone gets it, then it's like magic. All bets are off. I mean, they exchange problems. They're teaching themselves beyond what the teacher is teaching because they're excited about it.
There's a software and a mobile-based app that has just been released, and I'm not going to call its name, but I will talk with you about it offline. We're going to get it introduced here in Atlanta, and it's targeted for primarily 5th and 6th graders. And it does just that. It's a way for them to use their smart devices, their phones and tablets, to essentially help each other study and help each other grasp the learning. And it has had amazing results where it's been tried before. So I want to, given the fact that the kids are so technologically savvy in today's world, this might be a breakthrough opportunity for us to leverage their current, and let's just face it, black kids use technology probably at a higher rate than anybody else. So to be able to reach them where they're accessing information and then give them a tool to share with each other and promote that excellence, that same spirit you just described, but using modern technology to do so, is something that I'd love to see come to light, and at least on an experimental basis, test it in some really big markets so we can get some really solid data from the activity. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it makes sense. Look, let's be very clear. One of the reasons why I continue to push us to think differently, think out of the box, I mean, Beth, you talk about projecting where we are. Keep this in mind. The average 5-year-old today will work in a job when they're an adult that doesn't exist today. So if we're trying to teach, even when we're trying to teach school to career, the careers we're talking about don't even exist. They won't exist when these 5-year-olds are adults. So demographers, statisticians, people who understand the job market, they're quick to tell us that technology is the only way we can keep pace with the changing world. 2 generations ago, people worked in factories, in auto factories in the Midwest, electric factories. Those things are done now. No one works in that now. But there's a whole generation of black and brown folks that came up from down south that did that. It no longer exists. Well, now with technology, it's going to be the same type of thing. So, yeah, we have to be able to make sure that our kids who are naturally gravitate toward and are excited about it and it's fun, that we also make sure we continue to pepper in, the learning that's needed for the jobs of tomorrow. And so I think that any and all of that stuff is important. But the most important thing, and this is why, I wrote this article designed for parents who may come from challenged backgrounds and maybe didn't get educated themselves. We've got to find a way to not be afraid, because our folks get real comfortable, and we got to say, look, you know what? We're going to try this. We're going to look at this. We're going to step out the box. We're going to step out on faith, because that's the only way our kids are going to progress. We cannot do it the way we used to do it, or it just won't work.
I was really taken by the statement you made that whenever you walked into a school that you can figure out in 5 minutes if it's a good school or not. Can you we're going to have to say goodbye, but to end things, I kind of wanted just to get your what is that feeling, or what is it that you're seeing in that 5 minutes, so that maybe it's something that parents who don't have a lot of time, but when they walk through the doors of the school, maybe they can help tap into that same feeling or that vibe that you get when you walk into a school.
Yeah, that's a great question. And 5 minutes may be a little quick. 10 minutes, no more than 10. And I think what it is, there are a couple things. One, you see how they greet guests. You see how the children respond to guests. When you walk down the hall, the children have their head down and they say, "Good morning, sir. Good afternoon, sir." Are there signs of discipline or control without there being an overbearing feeling like you're in a prison? It's sort of a balance, but it's a school, so you can walk by a classroom and you can tell the kids, you can hear the noise, and but then you look in there and they're excited about working on a Bunsen burner, and you say, "Wow, okay." But that's different when you hear the noise and it's chaotic. And so if there's a chaos, when you walk in the door, you walk down the halls, you can tell that something isn't right. The interplay between the principal and teachers. If it's a stilted or awkward relationship, or if there's tension there and everybody can feel tension or tell there's drama, then something ain't right. But if it feels nurturing, you can also pick up on that as well. You walk into any given classroom, do they act like they need to act differently because you walked into that classroom? Or it's like, "No, we're used to guests. Come on in. You know what? Class, introduce yourself." And do they respond in a way to let you know that they're learning how to be not just productive citizens, but also social skills, and they're not afraid of adults. Looking people in their eyes, shaking their hands. It's quite amazing to me, and that's just off the top of my head, when you can pick off a couple of those things and see a direct correlation to how the kids in school perform on these tests. Because it's not just about learning the subject or drilling down, teaching the test. It is about social skills and life skills and how to conduct yourself, and understanding the value of discipline and focus, and understand how to work with each other, you can pick up on those things pretty quickly in just a few minutes. It's amazing how you can, but you can.
Yeah, that is amazing how how you can gather so much just by observing carefully. Kevin, we can't wait to have you back. These conversations are so helpful for us. They're so helpful for our listeners, and it really makes us really more in tune with what is going on with public education, with education in general, and how urgent this is as an issue for us here in modern society. We've got to tighten up and keep it tight if we anticipate actually creating or recreating American exceptionalism in the area of education and innovation in science and technology, and those jobs of the future that you described that our 5-year-olds today will have that don't even exist yet. That's probably one of the most profound things we want to leave people with today, is that your 5-year-old is going to have a job that doesn't even exist yet. So you better get present to what it's going to take to prepare that child for that job. And so once again, we really appreciate you here. This relationship we have with Urban News Service and the Call to Reason Urban News Service report is an amazing time we spend, and we look forward to it every day. And Kevin, we look forward to having you back as one of our regular guests and experts when it comes to education. And we've really enjoyed you again today, and Beth and I both are just grateful that you are here. Thank you once again, Kevin Chavous.
Okay, Beth Lovelace. We'll do it again soon. Thanks so much, guys.
Looking forward to it.
All right, folks, you've had former DC City Councilor and national education reform expert Kevin Chavous here with us on Call to Reason.